It's Bobby. Welcome back. Day number 18. How am I doing that? I really ought to just stick with the now, I guess. Um, well, I hope you had a chance to explore that source awareness meditation, or if you had checked it out before, maybe an opportunity to revisit it. The idea of that is to give you the experience that we are this awareness inside of which everything is occurring, through which everything is known, and of which everything is made, and allow you to experience it from within. You know, that phrase that I've repeated several times throughout this program, that we're not human beings that have an occasional spiritual experience. Rather, we're spiritual beings having a human experience, is something that any spiritually oriented person, any seeker, anybody on a quote unquote divine path recognizes as they recognize it kind of as a truth. And, you know, at least they can identify, and very often when I'm speaking in public, I'll start that phrase off, and people can finish it with me. We become a chorus at the end. They can sing right along with the concept of that. But living from that embodied point of view is something that is a little bit more difficult to achieve. And if you happen to like chocolate, I like using chocolate as an analogy, that if somebody has never tasted chocolate before, you could talk for days and be very eloquent and descriptive in talking about just how yummy chocolate is if you happen to love chocolate. But intellectually, it's not going to be anything that anybody understands until they've had it as well. And once they've had it as well, the description is no longer necessary. And the true experience of our true divine I am, our authentic self, our true nature, is something that exists before words. It's something that exists before form. So having the opportunity to quote unquote wrap our mind around it is something that I believe is impossible. I don't think it's something that, regardless of the number of books that you read or gurus that you listen to, it is ever going to be something that can be explained to you. It's something that needs to be experienced. And once experienced, then suddenly there's a shift that occurs on the inside. And that primary shift, I think the easiest way to explain it is that we're no longer pursuing happiness. We are embodying happiness. We're recognizing that love and joy and happiness and bliss is what we are. It's not something that we achieve. And that doesn't mean by any stretch of the imagination that you won't continue to go about your work doing the things that you do. You're still going to do things. Motivation will still arise. Creativity will still arise. Ideas will still arise. Activities will still arise. Just in the way that you show up for those activities will be completely different. And in NLP, I'm an NLP master practitioner from back in the days. One of the things that they teach in neurolinguistic programming is that if you're going to set goals to achieve goals, it's best to be working from what NLP calls an end state energy. Looking at the goal from the idea that the goal has already been achieved, and then kind of reverse engineering the path of what needs to unfold to get you there. And mindfulness to me is really embodying that state on a global level. And once that's achieved, some things are going to be exactly the same. Anger will still arise, frustration will still arise, any quote unquote depression might still arise. Those are appearances of consciousness that are appearing inside of consciousness. But the difference will be, as opposed to the conditioned egoic body mind that is under the spell of the hypnosis of social conditioning, those are states that we need to power through, that we need to suck it up. We need to snap out of it. We need to no pain, no gain. We need to compartmentalize and just move forward and fake it until we make it. And all of that will fall away. You'll recognize that that's nothing but a bunch of conditioned BS that has happened innocently and, as part of the illusion. As Einstein said, perceived reality is an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. And it's easy to get sucked back in to the illusion. However, once you have embodied this understanding, you look at those arisings as something completely different. In the first couple of videos, I talked about the fact that we're conditioned to believe that when we're angry or when we're happy or when we're anxious or when we're blissful, whatever our internal state happens to be, it looks like and it seems like, when you're really firmly ensconced in the illusion, that that's telling you about your circumstances. And hopefully by now, if you're at day 18 in this series and you've been following along and fully participating, that's already fallen away for you. You've recognized that life doesn't happen to you, rather it flows through you. And I want to take that to an even deeper level. I mentioned yesterday in the video, my friend Bud John had a presentation that, as I recall, was stepping into no thingness, that place before words or beyond words. And that there was a little typo in the subtitle, stepping into your sacred self, but the A and the C were transposed and it showed up as stepping into your scared self. And I want to explore the difference between those two a little bit and talk about how we can use some of these quote unquote negative emotions, the emotions that we've been conditioned to believe are not good, that are to be avoided, that are to be escaped from, how we can merely use those as pointers and one more whisper from wisdom reminding us that we are spiritual beings. We are the divine I am. We are the sacred being having the human experience. And think about it. If you are a spiritual person or a religious person, whether you're devout in a particular religion or not, or you may just consider yourself to be spiritual, there is a sense in every society that there is something greater than us. And through the conditioning, we have a tendency to make it something that's outside of us, a supreme being that is controlling everything. And if that's the frame through which you're seeing all of this, then absolutely go with that frame. But if, for example, if you're from a Christian perspective, I was raised Catholic, and in Catholicism, we have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And we're taught in that tradition that the Holy Spirit is all there is, and that everything that you see is made up of the Holy Spirit, and that you cannot be separated from the Holy Spirit, even if you try. So you could change the statement that I made earlier if it fits a little bit easier in your mind. Instead of using the term of consciousness or awareness, you could use the term Holy Spirit. Holy Spirit is that in which everything occurs. It is that through which everything is known, and is that of which everything is made. And there is that sense in, back in the Greek and Roman times, they had the pantheon of gods that were, controlling everything. If the seas were angry, it was because Neptune or Poseidon was pissed off about something that was going on. So he was creating turmoil on the seas, and it was making tough for the fishermen to go do their job. That's the rational mind attempting to put order to and to make sense of things going on. And we are very good as human beings, we're very good at rationalizing what's going on, creating a story that makes sense around things that are difficult for us to explain. And we tend to stick with those stories right up until the point that there's overwhelming experiential evidence that proves that that is not the case anymore. So over the course of the next several videos, I want to dive a little bit more deeply into this understanding. This to me is the essence of mindfulness. And mindfulness is interesting because many people, when I first start working with them, one of the common complaints that I get is, my inner critic is so loud and just won't shut up, and is so critical of everything that I'm doing, and it's running me down. It's interesting that we will, via our inner critic, talk to ourselves in a way that we would never talk to another human being on the planet, another perceived human being on the planet. But we subject ourselves to this criticism and rationalization, and just bullshit is what it is. And so sometimes when I introduce people to the concept of mindfulness, they're like, dude, my mind is so full already. I don't have any room for it to be even fuller. And, they perceive that some of these uh, techniques that I've been sharing to help us make our way through the human experience as one more strategy that they need to do. And that's not it at all. The strategies do help. The techniques do help if you find yourself getting overwhelmed. I taught you that two-hand stress disintegrator several videos back again, and that's useful for pulling yourself back out of the illusion. But what mindfulness really is, the way that I use that word anyway, is mindfulness is us being fully aware of the fact in every moment of every day that we are spiritual beings, that, from a Christian perspective, that we are in communion, we are in union with the Holy Spirit, or from a more secular spiritual point of view, that we are awareness, that we are pure consciousness, that we are source. Whatever labels we're giving to that, however that shows up for you, these concepts can work very, very well in your quote unquote model of the world. But ultimately, what we're pointing toward is something before words, something beyond words. And all we can do is point. There's a saying, I think it's from Buddhism. I'm not exactly sure where it's from, but it says, "Don't confuse the finger that's pointing toward the moon with the moon." My friend Michael Neal has a different saying that is equally as effective in helping you to get to this understanding, is that what we're pointing toward with this is fire, and we're pointing with a wand made of ice. And the closer that we get to the truth, the closer that we get to the fire, the closer that we get to the burning bush, if you will, the quicker the wand made of ice begins to melt. And another way of saying that is, words can only take you so far in this journey. And beyond that, you have to have the experience of diving deep into this. So if you didn't take advantage yesterday of my suggestion, my invitation to go check out that source awareness video, I would suggest that you go and do that now. Because I think a lot of this is going to make a bit more sense. It'll be easier, and it's not even really wrapping your mind around it. And it's interesting that that's, as we begin this exploration, that will be a point that some people will get stuck. They'll want to wrap their mind around this idea. And I merely want to suggest to you that that's not something that is actually possible. You'll never be able to intellectually grasp all of this, but you will be able to embody it. You will be able to experientially live from this space. You will be able to exercise the choice as to whether or not you're showing up as your sacred self, your divine I am, or are you showing up as your egoic body mind. And a lot of the emotions that we experience will suddenly become pointers for you. If you're getting angry about something, if you're losing your temper, if you're really frustrated or you're anxious, that will become an abnormal experience for you. It's not going to be something that you set aside, or you power through, or you shake it off, or you suck it up, or you compartmentalize. It's going to be something that you get curious about and go, huh, all right, what's going on here? Who is it that is feeling the frustration or the anxiousness? And you'll find, as we continue the exploration, that it's never, ever the divine I am. It's never the true, authentic self that is experiencing those emotions. Those emotions are arising within the true, authentic self. But the moment that you realize, oh, that persistent illusion has sucked me back into the perceived reality, it's got me overly identified, over taking things personally. It's got me overly identified with the human experience, that suddenly those things will just fade away. They'll just melt away. You won't have to do anything. You won't need a technique at that point. Just the cause for a pause, to stop and ask the question, who is this that is experiencing this anxiousness or frustration or whatever the emotion happens to be? It'll be another pointer for you. It'll be a point of inquiry for you. So if you haven't listened to the Source Awareness meditation, I encourage you to do that. If you have, it's different every time that you listen to it. When I recorded that, as I mentioned, I just wanted to be the hole in the flute through which wisdom blew through, and definitely felt like it was something that was channeled. I didn't give it any thought before I started to record it. I just got into that divine space and let wisdom flow. So check it out, and we'll talk again tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Ciao for now.